You are 14 years old the first time you hold a real sword, and it is heavier than you expected. Not just in your hands. In your mind. Your father watches from across the dojo without speaking. He has not spoken much since your mother died. The two of you live inside silence the way other families live inside conversation. You learn to read his eyes instead of his words. When he nods, you have done something right. When he turns away, you have done something wrong. He turns away often. You grip the sword tighter and swing again. 4 years pass this way. You wake before dawn. You sweep the dojo floor before you are permitted to touch a weapon. You carry water. You clean. You cook rice badly and eat it without complaint. You run the mountain path behind the compound in sandals that give you blisters that harden into calluses that stop hurting. Your hands change. Your posture changes. You stop carrying yourself like a boy and start carrying yourself like something that has been compressed under enormous weight, dense, tight, ready to release. The morning everything changes. You are in the yard practicing footwork alone. The sky is pale. Dew is still on the grass. A messenger arrives on a horse that has been ridden too hard. It is breathing in ragged pulls, its flank dark with sweat. The messenger does not dismount gracefully. He falls more than climbs down. He finds your father and says 4 words. You are close enough to hear them. Lord Cato's men came. Your father's face does not change. That is the most frightening thing you have ever seen. A man hearing that his village has been raided, his tenants killed, his land burned, and his face does not change. He simply says, "How many survived?" Not a question. A count. He is already calculating. 3 hours later you are riding toward the village, and you already know what you will find before you find it. You have heard the stories. Lord Cato does not raid to take. He raids to send a message. The message is always the same. Your lord is weak, your lord cannot protect you, your lord's name means nothing. When you arrive, the village is smoke and silence. 7 dead. The grain stores burned. The well fouled. And carved into the post at the village entrance, the Cato clan crest, pressed into the wood like a signature. You stand in the ash and feel something solidify inside you. Not rage. Rage is hot and loose and burns itself out. This is something colder. Something that settles into the bones and stays. Your father walks the village without speaking. He counts the dead by name. He remembers each one. When he is finished he turns to you and says the only thing he has ever said to you that you will carry your entire life. This is what it costs to be too slow. He means the sword. He means your training. He means all of it. You return to the dojo and you do not sleep that night. You practice until your arms stop being able to raise. Then you sit and meditate on the weakness in your arms, and when feeling returns you practice again. Your father watches from the doorway for a while and then goes to bed. He does not stop you. He does not tell you to rest. He understands that something has shifted and he respects the shift. That is the first time he treats you as something other than a student. It will not be the last. You are 19 when you receive your formal designation as a samurai in service to the Mori clan. The ceremony is brief. Lord Mori, a man with a face like carved stone and eyes that seem to be calculating things you cannot see, accepts your oath with a single nod. You are now bound. Not just by duty. By something older than duty. By the understanding that your life is no longer entirely your own. It belongs to the clan. To the Lord. To the name you now carry behind your own name. Your first assignment is not a battle. It is a border patrol. You ride the eastern edge of clan territory for 3 weeks with 4 other samurai, checking roads, speaking to farmers, logging movement. It is tedious work and you do it exactly as ordered. One of the older samurai in your patrol, a man named Hiroshi, who has been doing this for 12 years, watches you do it without complaint and at the end of the 3rd week says something that changes how you think about service forever. The farmers remember the ones who actually looked at them, he says. That matters more than you know. You think about that for a long time. You start looking at people when you patrol. Not through them, at them. You learn the names of farmers whose fields you pass regularly. You remember who has a sick child, who had a good harvest, who lost a horse. This costs you nothing. But you watch how it changes the way they speak to you, How information starts flowing in your direction naturally, without coercion. A farmer tells you about 3 men traveling the eastern road at night, carrying something heavy and refusing to say what. You investigate. The men are smugglers moving Kato clan weapons through Mori territory in preparation for something larger. You report it. Lord Mori's strategists move accordingly. A planned raid is preempted before it begins. Lord Mori summons you. He does not praise you in the way you expected. No ceremony, no reward. He simply says, "You used your eyes. Good. Keep using them." And dismisses you. You walk out of his chamber understanding that this is what recognition looks like at this level. Not applause. Assignment. He gives you a harder patrol the following month. That is the reward. You are 23 when you kill a man for the first time. It happens fast. Faster than you trained for. A night patrol, a figure in the road, a blade drawn before you can speak. Your body responds before your mind does. Years of muscle memory bypassing conscious thought entirely. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. Then the man is on the ground and you are standing over him with blood on your sword and your heart hammering so hard you can feel it in your ears. You stand there for longer than you should. Hiroshi rides up behind you. He looks at the man on the ground. He looks at you. He says nothing about what happened. He says, "Check if he's carrying anything." You check. The man has a message pouch. Inside the pouch, a coded letter with Lord Kato's seal. An assassin. Not for you. For someone higher up the chain whose name is in the letter in abbreviated form that your commander will recognize. You bring the letter in. It unravels a plot that has been 3 years in the planning. For men arrested within the week. An entire intelligence line of Kato's burned. You don't sleep well for a month. Not because of guilt, exactly. Something more complicated than guilt. You keep seeing the man's face in the moment he realized what was happening. The surprise in it. The brief, terrible moment of understanding. You learn that this image does not go away. It becomes part of your landscape, filed somewhere behind your eyes, retrieved occasionally without your permission. You learn to file it correctly, not suppressed, not obsessed over, but acknowledged. Present. Integrated into who you are now. You are not the boy who swept the dojo floor anymore. You understand this completely and without nostalgia. The years compound. Each mission adds a layer. You become fluent in the geography of consequence, how a decision made at dawn shapes what happens by dusk, how a word said in the wrong room echoes for months. You learn that information is the actual currency of power, not strength. You know samurai twice your size who will never rise above patrol captain because they think with their sword arm and not their mind. You respect them. You also know you are not them. You are 28 when Lord Mori calls you into his private council chamber for the first time. There are 6 men in the room. You are the youngest by 15 years. The conversation concerns a proposed alliance with the Oda clan to the north, the kind of political architecture that takes years to build and can collapse in an afternoon. Lord Mori does not ask you for your opinion. He asks you a specific question. What have the farmers on the northern road said this past season about Oda movement? You answer. Precisely. You have been paying attention to exactly this kind of detail for 9 years now. You tell him about the merchant who mentioned Oda soldiers buying grain in unusually large quantities 2 months ago. You tell him about the road repairs on the northern pass, not routine maintenance but reinforcement, the kind you do before moving heavy equipment. You tell him about the shift in the timber trade, how Oda's loggers have moved closer to the border. Individually, each detail is trivial. Together they form a picture. The picture says, Oda is preparing to move a significant force. Whether that force points at an enemy or a potential ally depends on what happens in this room over the next few weeks. The room is quiet for a moment after you finish. Lord Mori looks at you the way he looked at you years ago when you intercepted the assassin's message, not with warmth, but with the particular attention of a man recalibrating an estimate. He says, "Stay." The other men are dismissed. You stay. The conversation that follows lasts 4 hours and changes the trajectory of your career entirely. He gives you an intelligence role. Not patrol. Not enforcement. Observation, infiltration, analysis. You travel under merchant cover. You speak to people who do not know they are being spoken to for any reason other than commerce. You develop a network of contacts, an innkeeper near the Oda border, a retired soldier who drinks too much and talks freely, a monk who moves between provinces and sees everything and has learned to survive by being perfectly uninteresting to every faction simultaneously. You pay these people in small ways. Favors. Protection. Occasionally coin, never enough to make them rich enough to stop needing you. Your network grows. So does your awareness of its fragility. One wrong question. One name given to the wrong person. One contact who decides his loyalty can be purchased by a higher bidder. The whole thing unravels. You spend as much energy protecting the network as you do operating it. Redundancy. Compartmentalization. No one person knows more than they need to know. These are not lessons from a manual. There is no manual. These are lessons written in the near misses, the close calls, the 2 contacts you lost in consecutive months during your 3rd year of this work. You do not get to mourn them openly. You do not get to explain why the loss of a sake merchant and a temple groundskeeper is a strategic catastrophe. You absorb it. You rebuild. You are more careful. Carefully is the only speed you know now. You are 34 when you lead men in open battle for the first time. The intelligence you've built over 6 years has finally made a conflict unavoidable. The Kato clan's aggression has crossed a threshold and Lord Mori commits forces. You are given command of 40 men tasked with holding a river crossing while the main force moves around the eastern flank. 40 men. The math is not favorable. The Kato force coming at the crossing numbers closer to 120. You hold it for 6 hours. Not through courage alone. Courage without structure is just a faster way to die. You hold it through preparation. You have walked this terrain 3 times in the past year. You know where the riverbank softens, where it is firm. You know the sight lines from the tree line. You position your men not to fight a straight battle but to make the crossing feel more costly than it is. Noise, movement, feints that suggest numbers you don't have. You sacrifice terrain deliberately, drawing Kato's men forward into angles where 40 defenders become geometrically more effective than they should be. You lose 9 men. You hold until the main force completes its flanking movement and the Kato position collapses. When it is over, you sit by the river for a long time. You count the 9 names in your head. You know all of them. You knew their faces before this morning. You will know their faces for the rest of your life, the same way you have known every face since the first man you killed at 23. The collection grows. You carry it. Lord Mori says afterward, in that same precise, undecorated way, the crossing held. The 9 were not wasted. You understand that this is the most important thing he could have said. He is telling you that the 9 had meaning, that their sacrifice fits into something larger. This is what leadership is supposed to provide, context for loss. You file that away too. You will need it when you are the one providing the context for other men's loss. At 39, you sit on the council permanently. You have outlasted most of your peers, not through luck but through a discipline of self-management that borders on severe. You do not drink enough to compromise your judgment. You do not form attachments that could be used as leverage against you. You do not accumulate enemies carelessly. Every enemy you have was worth making. You have a reputation in 3 provinces that is not fully accurate and not fully false. It is the reputation you built for yourself the way a craftsman builds a tool, with specific use in mind. The moral weight of everything you have done, the men you have killed, the decisions that sent others to their deaths, the information you gathered through deception, the alliances you helped build knowing some of the men in them would not survive the politics, that weight does not diminish with time. You expected it to. It doesn't. What changes is not the weight but your relationship to it. You stop trying to set it down. You carry it standing upright. That is all. Young samurai are assigned to train under you now. You watch them. You are looking for something specific, not raw talent, though talent matters. You are looking for the ones who pay attention to the farmers when they ride patrol. The ones who remember names. The ones who understand that a sword is only one tool and often the clumsiest one. You find perhaps 1 in 20 who have it. You invest in those 1 in 20 completely. The others you make adequate. Adequate is also necessary. You are not sentimental about this. Every man under your training will carry something forward that came from you. You understand this as both privilege and responsibility. The questions you carry now are not the questions you carried at 19. At 19 the question was, am I capable? The answer was proven over 2 decades of evidence. The question you carry now is harder and has no clean answer. What is the cost of everything I have built, and to whom is it owed? The clan is more secure than it was when you were a boy riding to a burned village. The territory is larger. The name carries more weight. The border that Lord Cato once crossed with impunity has not been crossed in 11 years. These are real things. Measurable things. They did not happen by accident. They happened through decisions, yours and others, that came with consequences that still echo in the lives of people you will never meet. You think about your father's words still. This is what it costs to be too slow. You have spent your life being fast, in sword, in mind, in reading a room, in knowing when to move and when to hold. But you understand now what he could not have meant and what you have learned by arriving here. Speed has its own cost. Every decision made fast enough to matter was also made without complete information. Every confident choice contained uncertainty you could not afford to show. You lived in that gap between certainty and action for 25 years, and you made it work, and some of it was skill and some of it was something you have no better word for than grace. Today a young man is brought before you. 16. Son of a minor official who died last winter. No clan of his own now. He has traveled 3 days on foot to ask for placement as a student in your household. He stands in front of you with calluses on his hands that should not exist at 16, meaning he has been training without a teacher, using whatever he could find, driven by something internal that no external structure created. His posture is not polished. His technique, when you ask him to demonstrate, is rough and self-taught. But he does not flinch when you watch him. He does not perform. He simply does the thing as well as he can do it and then waits. You recognize something. You do not say yes immediately. You make him wait 3 days, as your father made you wait for things. The waiting is not cruelty. It is information. You watch how he uses the 3 days. He sweeps the courtyard without being asked. He helps carry water from the well. He speaks respectfully to the servants, not to perform respectfulness, but because it does not occur to him to do otherwise. On the 3rd day you send for him and say 2 words. You stay. He does not know yet what that means. He thinks it means a roof and training. He does not know it means 25 years of a specific kind of education, the kind that includes burned villages and coded letters and 9 names held in the back of the mind like stones carried in a pocket. He does not know about the moral weight that comes later. He cannot. No one knows it in advance. It must be earned and received simultaneously, without warning, in moments that do not announce themselves as defining. He bows. He is already thinking about the sword. He is not yet thinking about the farmer's name. He will learn. Or he will remain adequate. Either way, the work continues. The clan continues. The cost continues to be paid by whoever is standing close enough to the decisions that matter. You watch him go back to the courtyard and pick up the broom he set down when the servant called him. He sweeps without being told to finish. That is a good sign. You have built an entire career on good signs appearing in unremarkable moments. You turn back to your desk. There are reports from the northern border. There are always reports from the northern border. The work does not end. It changes shape, accumulates new urgency, offers new versions of the same ancient problem. How to protect what matters without becoming something that can no longer recognize what matters. You have not solved this. You are not sure it can be solved. You have only learned to hold the tension of it without breaking. That, in the end, is what you were trained for. That is what you have passed on. And somewhere in the courtyard, the broom is still moving.